Live from the ValdostaHomeSales.com studios, it is The Running Theory with Rick and Rob. Hold your applause, please.
How's it going, Rob?
Oh, we are back. We are back for another episode of The Running Theory. Live, streaming live all over the world, Facebook and YouTube.
That's right.
And bonus action, we put these podcasts up on iTunes,
Okay.
and Spotify, Google Play, pretty much all the big-time podcast places, platforms. You can check us out.
We're
and you can
everywhere.
listen to us in the car.
We're everywhere.
We are everywhere.
Hey, I got to ask you, how have you been, man? I haven't seen you. I feel like I haven't seen you in like a week.
I know.
I know.
You had a little procedure done.
Right.
We're out for a couple days. I was out of town this weekend, down in the beautiful Palm Coast. I left out at 5 o'clock in the morning and drove on down the Palm Coast for a little soccer tournament.
Nice. How was it?
For my 8-year-old. You know what? We were playing a year up. They do all this stuff, travel soccer. They do it all by the birth year. And so we were playing a year older because we had some older kids. And we had 4 out of our 6 players were girls. And so we didn't play any other teams with girls. And so we took a shellacking, but we learned. You know, you don't know
Sure.
what you're doing until you actually get out there. And so we played hard. You know, even when we were getting just shellacked, the girls didn't quit and the boys didn't quit.
Hey,
And
that's
you know
great.
what?
That's
There was
great, man.
learning experience, you know, and we've all been out there. I've had some learning experiences when you run, you know, half marathons or marathons,
Oh, yeah.
and you just
Definitely.
you get shellacked out on there on the course.
Of course. Yeah. You learn the hard way out there sometimes, unfortunately.
So what have you been up to?
Well, you know, like I say, I've laid off for a few days, but I got back to it on Friday, and I ran a few miles Friday, and then I ran a few miles on Saturday, and it went pretty good. Like I was saying earlier, you know, my calves were like really sore. You know, like I hadn't ran in a few days, which obviously I haven't. But I was feeling, I got those cramps in the middle of the night, like you get sometimes. You know, when you're laying there so comfortable, and you get these cramps in your leg, and you jump up. Had a few of those.
Well, you know, this morning at 6:30, it was 75 degrees
I
with
know.
like
Gosh, it's brutal out
1,000%
there.
humidity.
Yeah.
The dew point was like 75, which I don't know. We've talked about dew points before. I don't know if we talked about it on the show.
I'm going to
but
ask our guest about that because he actually kind of introduced me, whether he knows it or not, he introduced me to Dew Point several years ago at a race, I think. So I want to talk to him about that a little bit today,
But,
too.
you know, you go out there and the air is heavy and it is hot.
Yeah, oh,
I
yeah,
mean, I
yeah.
can tell. Humidity is something in South Georgia we just deal with. It could be the dead of winter and we're going to deal with humidity. But when you add the heat to that, this was like baking. I think today's heat index is supposed to be 105.
Holy smokes, yeah.
So that's hot. That's getting to the time of summer when you come home and you've lost 5 pounds out on a run.
Well, it's funny what you cling to when you're out there on the road. You know, just that little breeze you get every now and then, a little bit of shade when you're running along, you know, just means so much because I tell you, for me, I mean, the direct sunlight and the heat and humidity, it's just a killer for me. You know, it just puts me down. It really, really makes me struggle to get through that. But anything you can get out there, you know, an easy breeze, you know, a little overcast is always great.
Mm-hmm. And these are the time of years when you can't get discouraged because you had a bad run.
That's right.
You know, if you planned on 10 and you only get 7, it's okay.
You can't beat yourself up. That's for sure. You know, and I told myself, Rob, when I kind of got back to it, and we kind of alluded to this on our first episode, was that when I got back to it and started running again, that I was going to have fun with it this go around. I wasn't going to push myself too hard. I was going to get out here and have a good time. I want to. I've got goals and I want to accomplish certain things, but at the same time, I'm just not going to overdo it. I'm going to get out here and have some fun with it. So, you know, like you just said, I'm not going to go out there and beat myself up if I don't get 10 miles.
You get out there and what we call bear cult.
Yeah.
That bear is lurking out there, and you're running just fine, and then you go get bear caught, and you end up on the ground. I remember one of the funniest stories. I remember this.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And this is this had to be.
Was this me or you? I mean,
well, this was one of my stories.
Okay.
We were running and we were training. I forget what we were training for. This was many years ago, and this was back when you had the crew with
It was Debbie and
we had the Danger Runner crew, but we had the other crew that the fast crew that was showing up, and
right.
It had to be Todd Smoot and Ryan Kelly and Tom Phillips and what was the other guy? Sam, uh, Louis,
Oh, Sam Louie. Yeah,
Sam
yeah, yeah.
Louis, and they had a big pack running, and I ended up I don't know if we were on our second loop of probably like a 20 miler, and I was laying there on Baytree, and I was starting to cramp up in my legs, and you were there, and you were holding my leg up, and these guys that are just running like this nothing are just like sitting there laughing.
I remember that. Yeah,
And Sam Louis was the only one. He's like, I got some salt tablets if you want some.
yeah.
No, well, I'm
Little
good.
mercy
I'm
for
just
us.
just trying to stretch it out a little bit.
You remember that morning we were running? We were doing the 10-mile loop, and we were like 6 miles in, and I just laid on the ground. Remember, we were in that driveway, and I laid down. I was done. I was just toast, and I just laid there. And I mean, it felt so good just to lay on that concrete, and that had all I wanted. And I think I went up walking back.
Yeah, you got to gather your thoughts just so
Yeah,
you can make
yeah,
it back to the
yeah.
house.
Crash and burn every now and then, but hey, it's all fun.
Yep. So who do we have with us today?
Man, I am so honored to have Mike Beeman with us here today. Mike is from Tifton. He's an educator over in Tifton, but man, he is a runner's runner. I mean, the guy has just got so much to tell us. I mean, come on over, Mike. I know Mike, but I don't know Mike. We don't hang out together or anything, but we know each other well enough that we speak all the time, and he's just a good fellow, man. I mean, Mike's always involved with a lot that's going on there in Tifton, and I know that he's helped a lot of people in running, and I've just got a lot of questions for him. I know he can tell us so much. So, Mike, welcome.
Well, thank you guys for having the old guy on here, but
Man.
I regard you as a friend. I wish we did hang out because I don't
Yeah.
hang out enough.
I hear you. It seems like all I do is work and run and then drive home. That's about it.
All I do right now is run because I'm a teacher, and of course we've been on a sabbatical, if you will, with the COVID, and it's a serious business, as you know. So I get to run in the morning, I get to run at night, but to your point, Rob, about running and the distance and so on and so forth, I try not to change my distance goals, but I change my pace goals so I can get the distance. So say if I wanted to do 10 or 12, I would do that, but I'd slow down a lot. That's my theory on that whole,
Right.
Especially with this heat. And the point you made about dew point and humidity, I have this, I call them Beeman points, all right? And the Beeman points is when you add the temperature, dew point and humidity together. And in our mornings, they're usually, like this morning was 243, which is extremely high. The highest I've ever had in South Georgia is 255. So the humidity was 100, and then the temperature was 78, and the dew point was 77. You might as well just, get your coffin, because that's really bad. So it's tough to go above 220. Above 230, you're going to suffer. When it goes like today, 240, I did a 2-hour run. My joke was it took me 3 hours to do a 2-hour run.
Yeah.
But I went through 2 pairs of shorts, 2 singlets, because I changed out because I just sweat so much. But boy, it feels good afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
And my pace wasn't that bad. It wasn't that off. But then when you get the cooler weather, it makes you can run
Sure,
stronger.
yeah.
So a 10-mile run, I'll never stop, and just I can run with somebody like Melissa Luke.
Yeah, if you can
Yeah.
these days. Hey, I was going to ask you. I don't know if you can actually narrow it down to this, but if you're like an 8-minute, a mile runner, I mean, this kind of weather, I mean, can you kind of back it off to what you should be running?
Well, if you normally train at 8s in this weather, you're going to be over 9, because my normal training pace right now at my old age is 9 minutes is very good. And so now if I'm going 10 to 10:15 a mile, I'm very satisfied with that. But it's all relative. So
Sure.
when I was younger, in the Todd Smoot days, although I was up there when he was down here, our training pace was 6:30 to 7 miles for 7-minute miles on a 20-mile run, but on a hot day would be 7:30, 8 minutes a mile for that. So just about a minute for me.
So when you're doing distance, basically the idea is you want to be moving along nice and easy.
Yes.
You can converse.
Oh, goodness, yes. And the hardest thing for me to teach, because at this stage of the game, I run the marathons, I run them slowly, 4 to 4.5 hours for me is slow, and it might be slower than that. But to help people achieve that marathon distance, I just slow them down. So for instance, Rob is training for a 4-hour marathon. So that's, I think, 9:17 a mile, something in that range. I would have Rob train at probably 10:30, 10:20 a mile for his long runs, about a minute slower. And of course, I'm with the Jeff Galloway fan club, because Jeff and I used to interface quite a bit in my younger days, and I believe in those walk breaks. I walk all the time. I take my breaks, whether it's a minute or 30 seconds. So I teach the beginner ratio running. For instance, run 3 minutes, walk 30 seconds, or run 2 minutes, walk a minute, walk 2 minutes and run a minute. Everybody's at a different level, but the achievement is still the same. If I had a lady the other day that made it 5 miles for the first time in her life, and she was thrilled, and she was doing
Yeah, that's a great achievement.
1 to 2. So it's all relative to the individual.
Right. Go ahead, Rob.
I want to go back to how you got started, because you're a hooper by nature. You're a basketball player.
Yes. I went to in high school, because people say, well, you must have been a track star in high school. And I'm one of those converted people that in high school, and it was a long time ago, I graduated from high school in 1974 in New Hampshire, by the way. And as a basketball player, in order to get shape, I ran cross country. I hated it.
Hard to imagine.
Yeah, I hated it. But it got me in shape for the basketball season. So I went to Merrimack College, it's just a Division II school, on a basketball scholarship. But I also ran, and I was pretty good in track. Like, I didn't know that I was good. I was 800, well, it was an 880 back then. Mm-hmm. And I ran sub 2 as a senior. I had no idea what that meant, but I was good at it. So when I got into college, I went in as a basketball player. And Division II, played a couple of years sub-varsity, and then was a role player my junior and senior years. Well, during that time, the cross-country coach, obviously wanted me on the team, so I was. And I lost the weight during cross-country season, and basketball, I bulked up. Well, before my senior year in basketball, I was so hooked on running that summer that I wanted to qualify for the Boston Marathon, because my friend, Dave McGilvery, who was my teammate in cross country, who is the current race director of the Boston Marathon, world-renowned race director. He was my teammate and went to Merrimack with me. I watched him run it in 1977, and I said, I'm going to run it next year. In the meantime, we were training for the basketball season, and I went away one weekend and ran this marathon up in Canada and missed qualifying for the Boston Marathon by 29 minutes. I didn't have a shot, right? Mm-hmm. Didn't tell anybody. Came back, and we started basketball season. But I found another marathon in New Jersey in December, and we had an open weekend. So I drove down. I remember driving down on a Saturday, running it on Sunday. Now remember, I'm a senior in college, weighed 185 pounds. I ran 2 hours and 56 minutes. And the qualifying time was 3 hours. So I ran it in the spring of 1978 with no I went through the basketball season. I got in a couple runs. I did a couple 15-mile runs and went out and ran Boston in 1978 and just kept running.
So what was the difference? I mean, why did you make it that time? Do you think just those extra runs is what put you over the hurdle?
You just knew how to run it.
Yeah.
Or you just...
I think that I had a lot of athleticism. How you just have that athletic ability. I didn't do long runs of 22, 23. And I really wasn't smart. I think I went out at 6-minute pace and probably died at about 20 miles, but, finished up in under 3 hours. But back then you had to run under 3 hours. And then the next year they changed it to 250. And for the first 10 years that I ran Boston, it was 250 just to qualify. So my idea was I'll do it there and then not worry about it for the rest of the year. So I was just blessed with, I guess, genetics and the fact that I had some great, tutors along the way, because I worked for Nike for a while before I got into teaching in Converse. And along the way, you've got some people that are very well versed in running. Arthur Lydiard, the famous New Zealand coach, he worked with me in Converse, and we used to travel together. And he really laid down, what it's like to run long and long and long and long and just get stronger and stronger. He believes that Americans run too fast. He says, you guys run too fast all the time. And he was right. So he says, your long runs should be 25 to 30 miles, and they should be so conversational it feels like you're walking. And I believe that to this day, God rest his soul. So I took a lot from him. and incorporated it into my own training, and then tried to help my fellow runners or the kids that I've coached over the years. Not everybody likes to run slow. They believe, well, if you go faster, I'm going to get faster tomorrow. But as we know, if you go faster tomorrow than you did today and faster the next day, you're probably going to get injured.
Yeah.
Well, I coach a lot of middle school basketball, and, I played basketball when I was in college at Division III school. But I tell the one advice I give to these young kids, 10, 11 years old, I was like, start to enjoy running. If you enjoy running, running is the basis for all sport. So if you enjoy running, if you will, and it doesn't have to be long. If you go out and run a couple miles, a couple times a week during the off season and start to enjoy it, you will, when basketball season comes, if you start to run line drills, minute 30-second line drill becomes nothing to you, And so I was telling a young girl this weekend, she said, I'm a basketball player, I don't enjoy running. Change your way of thinking. Start to enjoy it, and if you start to enjoy it and you become a better runner, you will be a better athlete.
That's correct. It's a base that every sport needs. If you're running, whether it's slow, but getting that base in 2, 3, 4, 5 miles, then your body can do the anaerobic work, the quick stuff, the line drills and stuff like that. So fortunately for me in college, I didn't know it at the time, I had that good blend. So I could run a sub 10 2-mile, when we'd have our time trial for basketball. We had to run it in 12 minutes, and I'd do it in like 9:50. And then as the season started, I could get up and down the court. I wasn't a great player, but I knew my role, and I was a player that could do things, that required, running around, just running after another player. Or if I was, in a good offensive mode, it was hard to catch me, and we just ran and ran and ran. So it was a lot of fun and good memories. But once that stops, our season stopped in March, I don't have 4 teammates anymore, so I wanted to do something. So that's where the running, continued, and I was able to do something. And goodness, I praise God every day that, I caught on to it, because it gives you such a focus during your day. It gives you discipline. So, for instance, I mentioned the 2-hour run this morning. No matter what happens today, if I mess up this interview today, or, if your ratings go down because I'm on here, no matter what happens today, at the end of the day, when I kneel down and thank God, I've run 2 hours at least. And that feels pretty good. You feel like you've done something. And I do believe that runners are probably the most disciplined people outside of their running. So they're going to be usually on time, they're going to have good work ethic, and they're probably going to be fairly healthy and show up for work. So
I agree with you. Yeah,
there's
definitely.
there's a lot of pluses from it, and I've often said, you joke about, you're going to someday just die on the roads, running. I says, what a way to go, if you're doing something you love. And
yeah, absolutely.
I wish for that a couple of times during a couple of marathons. I'm like, if I get hit
I felt
by
like I
a
was dying
truck
few
right
times.
here, it'll be just fine with me.
Yeah,
I'll be fine to be laid out. They could say, he died doing what he loved.
Mike, do you encourage weight training or anything like that?
Strength training. We've got a terrific strength and conditioning coach at our high school now that comes from Valdosta State, Michael Dosher.
Michael Dosher will be great. Which we've been talking about having him on the show. I think he's the one that converted Todd Smoot.
Yes,
from believing in weight training.
And for a runner, it's a lot of resistance and holding something, and not heavy weights. And he's very good at teaching. We've had like 3 sessions so far with him, and I'm very impressed with him. And he uses I guess I call them bands, but he uses those. He uses weight also, but his style's very good. So yes, I believe in stretching. I use bands all the time, and I use exercise balls, and I've had so many injuries over the years, not to sideline me completely, but enough to aggravate you for enough. And like any smart runner, if something's hurt, just run on it. No, don't do that. Don't do that. But that's, do what I say, not what I do, because I've really messed myself up a few times, and they linger, and then you say, man, what's wrong with me? And it's usually some little quirk, and it's usually not the area that hurts. So if it's your lower back, it might be something down here. I've learned a lot about the other parts of the body affect the upper parts of the body.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I want to ask you about a particular injury you had a few years ago, but before I do, how many miles have you ran? I think you posted that a while back.
I looked it up before I came down here, 132,766. So
that's a lot of miles.
That's a lot of miles. So what is that? What's that equal to as far as like around the world? Didn't you kind of put that
5 times around the world, average over. I just came up on my 50-year anniversary was June 24th of when I had my first training run, because I wanted to get in shape for cross country, and I ran. It said 2 miles in my journal, and I took 50 years and divided it by, it figured out to be 18,250 days, right? So I divided that into 132,700, and it came out to 7.27 miles per day, and that includes days off over those years.
That's pretty good.
So do you take days off?
Not a lot. I should take more. I believe in days off, but I also believe that if, for the last 3 months, you run in the morning, run at night, and if you rest in between, rest is more important than running itself. So when I'm teaching, and coaching, and I go 90 to nothing because I coach cross country, I coach with a basketball program, and I coach track. So I don't do as much in terms of mileage, but I take days off, usually a Friday because Saturday is long run day. But I do believe in resting the
Nobody
body.
runs on Friday in Tifton. I'm the only guy out there on Friday evening.
Yeah,
I go out there and
Friday.
it's just like no one around anyway.
Yeah, it's. I think it's an ordinance.
Yeah, you might be right. Hey, let me ask you, Mike. A few years ago, and I'm probably going to flood this up. I know you had a pretty, I guess, bad injury. It kind of really sidelined you. You had something happen in your leg, or something detached, right?
Yes, it was bilateral quad tendon rupture. Ruptured both quad tendons in both legs at the same time. They both snapped. And I was out on a run, and it was bound to happen. I had no warning, and I was running on Murray, and there's a little pothole right in front of Northeast, and somebody went by and I waved to him, and when I waved, I stepped in the pothole, causing this one it snapped, like it went boom. And when that happens, it's like cutting your tendons. So you don't fall forward. You just land on your kneecap. Well, when I did, I landed on the right one, and the right one, because it would be like holding you up, and you bend your knees, okay, underneath you, and dropping you from probably 6 feet, and it just snaps. That's the tendon snapped. And so I did the real smart thing. I tried to get up, which was not the right idea.
You had to finish your run, right?
Yeah, and I couldn't. And I saw the tendons roll up. I saw my kneecaps fade. They started dropping into my shins. I go, that's not good. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I couldn't. And I don't carry a cell phone. So Keith Barr was riding his bicycle, and I says, Keith, my car's right over here. Those are my keys. I was going to drive home. I thought it was just going to, be okay, but
it'll wear off in a minute.
Yeah. So the ambulance came, and they said, what's wrong with you? And I was sitting there with my hands back, calm. I was in pain, but I said, these tendons snapped. I saw them roll up like fruit roll-ups, and they said, you sure? And I said, you sure you want to go to the hospital? I says, yeah, I need to go. So I went, and I explained to the emergency room doctor what it was, and he says, no, you'd be screaming and yelling. And he took his finger and he pushed it, and when he pushed it, he pushed down, and he could feel a table on the other side. And he says, oh yeah, you did it. And so I went into surgery. The doctor said, your running days are over. And I said, that's fine. God's blessed me with so many years. I can walk, no problem. And had the surgery, and it came out real well. The doctor said there's nothing else damaged. Your tendons are great. Your kneecaps are perfect for your age and somebody that's run as much as you. And then the next day, Dr. Scott came in and he says, in his gruff voice, he says, "You'll be running in 6 months," and I went to Andy Ellis 4 days later, and he says, "I'll get you stronger than you were before if you do the rehab right, but it's going to be tough and it's going to hurt." I says, "Give it to me," and he released me. I was supposed to be there 6 months. He released me in 4. He says, "There's nothing else I can do for you." In that April, so it happened on Labor Day. That April, I went to Boston in 2013. Everybody's worried that I'd snap them again, and I wasn't, because God brings people back from the dead, and
Well, they hadn't been with you through the rehab,
right,
and
right.
I mean,
Exactly.
so you know what kind of rehab you did.
Yes, and I did Snickers with a friend, and we jogged through it at like 5 hours. So went up to Boston, and and my daughter went with me. It's the first time she flew, and she was with a former student of mine who happens to be 59 years old, because I was teaching in 1978. And he took her along the course. Great friend. He knows the course. He's run it. I met her at 4. I met her at 10. I saw her at 20 right over Heartbreak Hill, and right before you get into Boston College. And I said to her, I go, "Melanie, I'm going to make it." I said, "I'm going to walk most of the last 6 miles, but I'm going to make it. And I'm going to make it in a pretty good time. I'm going to be like 4:40 or so." And that, considering I was on 2 bum legs, and that was the year the bombs went off. Mm-hmm. So I never saw her at the finish. She was taken out of the city, and that's a whole nother story. But but the funny thing about that, when you put life is so, it's just situations. Nobody asked me, "How are your legs?" after that. They were, "What was it like?" The bomb. They did not. One person said, "Were your legs okay?" Because everything was focused on that bombing. That's incredible how things switch up like that.
Yeah.
And in a million years, I wouldn't have predicted that or what's happening right now.
I think you told me at the bombing that of course they started stopping people, and you were what? You were about 4 miles out.
Oh, I was about a quarter mile out.
A quarter
yeah,
mile.
I was very close.
Did you hear it? Did you hear anything?
Well, I don't know, because there's so much noise when you get into Kenmore Square. I'd already passed Fenway Park. I was I basically had about 80 meters, and then you turn a corner on Hereford, and then you hit Boylston Street. And Boylston Street is where the bombs went off. So I couldn't see it, but certainly there was noise when I went under that final underpass. There was an underpass that you saw a picture of it where they stopped us, and you could hear something, but I didn't know what it was, because there's sirens going off and so on and so forth. So I don't know. All I knew was people were coming towards me rather than away from me, and they had numbers on. And I said, and at first I was upset. I was like, "How dare you cool down coming towards me?" That feeling like, yeah, you're good. And it bothered me. Like, I go, what, cocky, and I didn't know what was going on. And then they started yelling at us to just, stop and not move and so on and so forth. And I realized what was going on, but I didn't know how serious it was. So I eventually hopped the barricades, which we were allowed to, looking for somebody's cell phone, which I didn't have, but the cell phones didn't work.
So did you know where your daughter was along that
I
point?
had no idea. So I walked up to Boylston Street to see I didn't know if buildings were down. I didn't know if things were blown up.
So people are saying there was an explosion.
Yes.
There was a bombing.
Yeah, they said
they don't elaborate because they don't know.
Yeah, so I went up there, and the devastation. Obviously, if you've seen Patriots Day, which by the way is coming out on Netflix, I think starting Wednesday. Great movie, and it's accurate too. But it was awful. It was absolutely, what I saw was terrible. And I go, wow, it was just the devastation that you saw, the little boy who lost his life, and the amount of panic and chaos and terror. People were running, screaming, and then I felt kind of alone, because I saw father and daughters and mothers and sons and husband and wives all, "You're safe, you're safe, you're safe." And nobody's hugging me, I'm like, "Where's my daughter?" And I didn't know where to go. So I think it was about 45 degrees. And of course you have a singlet and shorts, and that's all I had on. No cell phone, nothing warm, and I'm freezing. And I was you know the feeling after a marathon.
Sure.
Mhm.
After, because I had made it 26 miles. So I was walking down Hereford Street away from where everything happened, and I literally looked up and I said, what do I do now? What do I do? And I saw these kids, college kids, going into a building, and because everything was in lockdown immediately, and I said, where you guys going? And they said, this is our frat house. Are you okay? And I says, no. I says, I'm freezing. If you had a number on that day, a Boston Marathon number, any day that Boston's run, you're a rock star. You could probably really hurt somebody and get away with it because you ran Boston. So come in. And so I went in, and they go, you can have the easy chair. And there was males and females. They're getting ready to do their drinking games and stuff. And they said, do you drink beer? And I said, no, but today I will. And they said, we can offer you a ketchup sandwich, but that was it. And those kids, credit to the younger generation, they took care of me, and they would not let me leave their little frat house until I got in contact with Melanie. And it took a while. It took about an hour before the call went through, but it didn't go to her. It went to Paul, my friend, and they were 30 miles away already. They were out of the city, gone. And Paul says, just get up to Wilmington. I know where Wilmington is because I'm from there. So I, hitchhiked a ride to the train station thinking I could take a train up there. The train station was closed because everything was closed. I did not know the magnitude of what happened. I had no idea. I thought people in Tifton didn't even know about it. I thought, oh man, they're going to think I hurt myself again because I didn't make it across the finish line. I had no idea what was going on. And finally I got a cab, and it took me 30 miles away, and I got reunited with my daughter. And then as soon as I got in the vehicle, Melanie's cell phone was charged, and it was just going, it was beeping, and all these calls and so on and so forth. It was an experience that was unparalleled, in my lifetime, certainly.
What is your connection with Wesleyan College? I know that.
Oh, Wellesley?
Is it Wellesley? I'm sorry.
Wellesley College is an all-women's school. It's the only school on the planet that I told my daughter she couldn't go to. So at the 12.32 mile mark is Wellesley College. And the tradition is those girls, and I think it's every single one, they get out on the right-hand side of the marathon course, and they call it the Wellesley College Scream Tunnel. And they scream, and they hold up signs. It's been the kissing booth of the Boston Marathon since the 40s. And so when you go by, you're supposed to kiss a girl. But now they've made signs like, kiss me, I'm a freshman, kiss me, I'm homecoming queen, kiss me, I'm this, kiss me, I'm that. And they put they're just amazing. So for 33 years, I think, every time I ran by there, I was so looking at my watch because I wanted to run a certain time, not realizing that I don't have to qualify anymore after 25 years. I didn't know that. So they told me after 32 years I didn't have to qualify anymore. So now what I do is I made that shirt that says, I heart Wellesley College. Well, you'd think I was Justin Bieber at a high school dance. I mean, they're 8 deep, and they want to kiss you on the cheek, and they want to take a selfie. So I spend 5-6 minutes. So that's why I have the shirt. But being a marketing teacher, I got smarter. A few years ago, I switch out the shirt after I get through Wellesley. You go through Wellesley and you go through Newton, and after you go through the hills in Newton, which is the Heartbreak Hill, the famous Heartbreak Hill, when you crest the top of the hill, then you go down right and you run right through BC. So I switch out shirts with my daughter, and the second one says, I love Boston College. So they, 2 years ago, because was it last year, 2019, we didn't run it this year. We're going to run it in the fall virtually. I switched it out right there in front of the kids, and they went, it was like I scored the, winning goal in the, Stanley Cup playoffs. They went crazy. The crowds there are just incredible, absolutely incredible. There's nothing, I don't know what Peachtree's like because I haven't run it in years, but the crowds at Boston are incredible.
Oh, I'd love to do it, but Peachtree's amazing. I mean, I have a great time there too. I mean, the crowd's really into it. But And Boston Marathon was just a dream. You know,
I think we should pick up and do the show from Boston one day
Oh, man, wouldn't that be great?
when they actually do it in person.
That would be
Hopefully,
great.
2021.
I've
Yeah.
done a
Yeah.
remote from Boston when I was up there for a radio station. It's interesting. You can't even hear yourself.
No,
think.
I'm asking you to take us with you.
Okay, all right, that's fair. That's fair. You can do that.
I would love to go there. I would love to run it. That would just be amazing.
You know, it is, and it's the only marathon besides the Olympics you have to qualify for. So, like I said, it's been a blessing. The virtual one in September is interesting because I don't know how they're going to do it. Because let's be honest, a Garmin or anything, they're not going to do it for place. They're going to. I think they're trying to take the people that basically got. I don't want to say they got jilted or cheated, but the people that qualified for 2020 and couldn't run. Now that might be somebody that's spent all their life trying to qualify. Qualified. Now they're refunded their money. There's no. You can't defer to 2021. So, for instance, Melissa. She qualified, she can't run it. So they're offering a virtual, I think, kind of to make up some of the money. I choose to do it. If you have a streak like I do, and you choose to do it, and you make it within 6 hours, you add to your streak. If you have a streak and you choose not to do it, it doesn't hurt your streak. So let's just say I'm at 42. I do the virtual, I send it in, I'm at 43. You have 43, you choose not to do it, now we're tied. That's how that's going about. But it's not going to be a winner like any virtual race because I don't think you can prove that.
Right.
Well,
you said that
what they should do is they should open it up to everybody.
That's
And
I
do
agree.
everybody to a virtual Boston, and they could raise money. You get a Boston shirt, or I ran the Boston Marathon shirt. Open it up to everybody.
I can't be ready by
I
September.
agree 100% because it's not hurting anybody.
Yeah.
And they could recoup. I agree 100%.
And then a lot of people like me and you who might never get to Boston
Right.
because,
Unless we do this. Yeah.
they can say, they could have their little, I ran Boston. I did the virtual race.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dave, one thing about Dave McGilvery, if I email him tonight and email him that, I'm sure he's thought of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to ask him.
Which a lot of people will say, well, it's not the same because you didn't qualify. You know what?
Put an
Yes,
asterisk. You put an
yes.
asterisk on the shirt.
Yeah, just put it, instead of a hashtag,
Yeah.
put an asterisk.
Yeah. We can at least say we had some part of it.
But you know what? There's several runners who
Mike.
do it for fundraising efforts
Sure,
and things
yeah.
like that, and that could be an aspect of it too.
I agree. I have nothing, people say, well, the charity runners shouldn't be able to, they're raising so much money for charity. And it's great to see somebody that's never done it, that it means so much to them, that, that they get across that finish line. And it's a very big day up in Boston. They shut down the state. It's a holiday. And it's crazy there, absolutely crazy. But I love it. And I miss, doing it this year, but I think we have bigger fish to fry with the health situation of our country.
Yeah. Well, you said you 25 years kind of grandfathered you in.
Yes.
How many other people are at that point? That's 25 consecutive times, right?
Well, they publish a list, and it's less than 100. I think there's 87 people on the list. I don't look at it as much as some people take it pretty serious. I'm number 6, and the people above me, God bless them, some of them are in their 70s, But if you started when you were 21, you have a better chance of going. But the thing is health is a big thing, because if you get injured one year, the streak is done. It's done. So for me, it's just neat to see when they publish that list. You see yourself there, and they publish it in the Boston Marathon program. So, these guys are from, Maryland, and, Massachusetts has about 3 of them. And then you see Tifton, Georgia. And there's another guy that's in the top. He's run like 25 straight. He's from Atlanta area. I don't know who it is, but it's a pretty, and they keep track of it up there. They do. So all of a sudden you get this notification, and I got it in 2002, I think, and they said, by the way, you've run 25 straight. Congratulations, and so on and so forth. And I knew I did, but I didn't know that they do. Because back then everything was not digital. It was just recorded, manually. And
Right.
so it's nice to know that you're recognized for. I don't know if it's for, certainly not for talent, but it is for commitment. And it's neat to see those guys every year and right now our group, the top 10 guys, it's about 10 of us, we're in this virtual race across the country together. We're on a team because Dave, wanted to put something on for runners. So he put together the Medford, Oregon to Medford, Massachusetts. You run across the United States, and your team accumulates miles during the, you put your mileage in every day, and that's kind of neat. It gives you some incentive to run. And I think we just got through Ohio, so I think we're in Pennsylvania right now, and and there's a celebrity team, and like Bill Rogers is on it, Joni Benoit, and the guy Rudy, Sean Aston, big runner.
Yeah.
You know
I
the
didn't
guy.
know that.
Really?
Rudy.
Yeah.
I lined up next to him one year because he's one of those people that gets in because he's a celebrity, and I was going to start, Rudy, Rudy, but I didn't do it because he's probably heard that a million times.
So is your PR at Boston?
No, my PR at Boston is 2:37 and change. I ran Marine Corps in 2:35:42, and that was 1982. And I ran another marathon in 2:31, but I questioned the distance. So I don't call that my PR. If it wasn't certified, it's not legit. It was in the middle 1980s. And there was a lot of courses like that before certification. It's about
Close enough.
it's about 26.2, and I went out and measured it in my car. It was like 24.8, and I ran 2:31. I go, that's not right. But yeah, I ran in 1982 was the year Al Salazar and Dick Beardsley, they went, in those days, if you ran 2:37, Todd will tell you, because I think that year, Todd, even though we didn't know each other, I think that was the year he ran, I want to say he ran sub 2:20. That's what I want to say, but I'm not sure. He was very fast. And we were both in the top 100 one year. And in those days, there was no barricades. So when you're running down the street, the crowds are like on top of you, and they'd separate for you. They'd separate. It was like an accordion. So nowadays, I'm running next to 18 people. Those days, I'd be running by myself, and they'd just open up, and then they'd close. And the guy that was in front of you, you probably couldn't see. But I think that was the year, I want to say Joan Benoit passed me, on her way to a American record. And the crowd, it was so loud. I thought they were cheering for me.
So how tall are you?
6'2".
6'2"?
Yes.
That's tall for a 2:37 runner.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yes. I have size 13 shoes too, but some of the taller, like Jeff Galloway is over 6 feet. Rod Dixon, Rod's taller than I am. And he ran, Rod is the guy that, remember New York City Marathon where he it's before your time, sorry. 1983, where he overtook Jeff Smith in Central Park. And Jeff and I are good friends. We communicate every day. He was leading that the entire way, and Dixon beat him in the last 300 yards.
Oh, wow.
And
Heartbreaker.
Rod's about 6'3", 6'4". So, yes, relatively tall. And I don't have a great gait cycle, but it works for me. My gait cycle is low to the ground. Salazar had a low gait cycle. I'm not comparing myself to him, but you can't look at somebody and say, well, he has a low gait cycle or blah, blah, blah. If he's getting the job done, I don't care what he looks like. And other than that quad thing, which had, if the listeners or viewers, all 7 of them for me, because I won't, I'm not going to be as good as the girls that were last week. It wasn't due to running as much as all the other stuff I've done in my life. I've been into everything. CrossFit before it was CrossFit. Just ridiculous stuff that, and of course jumping, in basketball, ankle weights, weight vests and stuff like that. I was doing CrossFit right before this happened. And CrossFit is awesome, but it's not awesome for me because of my age and my joints. And so I believe I hurt myself initially doing some crazy stuff, which I shouldn't have been doing. My fault, not CrossFit. And it just popped the quad. It was like it was like a rope, and it just. So I told him to put some titanium in there, and really, some.
The bionic man.
Yes, exactly. So I just want to keep going. People say, "When will you stop?" And I says, "God will tell me when to stop." And
Well, how old are you?
I'm 64.
64. Well, Plymo's 70, so
he's still running. He did 100-miler, what, 3 years ago?
Yeah.
And those years, hopefully, with it being teaching and so on and so forth, retirement's around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
I plan to teach until I either don't enjoy it or they don't enjoy me or health. And heck, if training when you're retired is like what I'm doing right now, shoot. I ran Albany March 7th, and then I did a Boston. We actually ran our own Boston just because we thought it would be neat on the day of the Boston Marathon in April. I did 26 miles on a Saturday morning by myself.
Really?
Yes. And it was.
What kind of time did you do?
I did 4 hours, 29 minutes, and 16 seconds. And it was like a day like today. It was one of those days. And I was roasting. And that included, because you can't stop your watch. I stopped and changed. I stopped and had a peanut butter sandwich. I did all that stuff.
Oh, my goodness. I don't know how you did it.
So.
Now, is this a loop through Tifton that you do, or?
I just did. I've got some wheel measured courses, and I just did them repetitively, and then just added, whatever I needed. I have that measuring wheel, so I want everything legit if I'm going to do it. So.
Well, there's been some talk about you putting on a marathon in Tifton. Is that right?
Well, I told the group, the Tifton runners, that it would be nice to run a 10K on 4th of July from Northeast because everybody's missing out on Peachtree.
Mm-hmm.
I've run Peachtree once, but I haven't run it since I've moved to Georgia. I ran it in 1986, and I lived in New Hampshire.
Had to make a trip down.
Yeah, I flew down because I had a number that was given to me by Converse because I was working for Converse at the time, and they gave me a number, and it was like 18. And probably somebody that was an elite runner that couldn't show up. And I ended up running in 33, 18 or 19.
That's pretty quick.
Yeah, and I was probably top 25. But I was not surprised, but they really, the top 100, they put way ahead of everybody else. And it was almost like you were running a local road race in Hayhira because, I saw both of you, but I didn't see, thousands of people.
Right.
And then you finish and then everybody comes. So I liked it. I thought it was very tough. I remember that. I was like, wow, this is tough.
Yeah,
it
it's
was
tough race.
hot.
Yeah, especially if you're pushing it.
Yes. And so I'm just sad. They're talking about having it on Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
That's
what I hear.
Yeah.
Well, I know they've canceled some other big marathons, some world majors. New York City is canceled. The Donna Run down in Jacksonville, and
it's canceled for 2021.
Yeah.
Yes,
already. Ooh.
Yeah. I think with the numbers spiking like they are, people are getting a little nervous, which understandable.
Mm-hmm. I understand that.
And down here in Georgia, New Hampshire. Guess I got that priority straight. I'm sorry. I'm just teasing. One of my friends is a big race director up there in New Hampshire, and so he lobbied with a mutual friend of ours who's the governor, Chris Sununu. He said, road racing, what are we going to do with that? And so the governor, they put a committee together to figure out how are we going to do road racing? How are we going to do that? Because we address education, we address sports. What are we going to do for road racing? So they made it a category, and they came up with a plan, and they have races up there already. And they start people every 10 seconds. And in registration, it's like Walmart. You have to stay away from everybody. When you pass somebody, you have to pass them 6 feet. It's well organized. And if you have chips, if you have chip timing, you can do anything you want. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of neat.
That's got to be the only state with road racing on the agenda.
Yeah. Yes, and I love my home state, New Hampshire. I really do. That's where I'm from. But to give you a perspective, Florida right now has double the cases per day. So say if Florida's at 8,000 or 9,000 in a day, New Hampshire doesn't have that many for the entire time that's been going on. They have like 5,600 for the whole time. They have a smaller population. I don't know if they've distanced better. People live further apart up there too, But
Yeah.
Massachusetts, on the other hand, was in the top 5 in the country, and Massachusetts and New Hampshire right next to each other. So that's why I haven't gone back home during this time, because
Yeah.
there's,
Yeah.
there's
It's not a good time.
There's hot spots, and I really don't think it's other than coming to Valdosta. I mean, that might be the furthest I travel for a while. That's a big deal to me. I'm gonna have to.
Well, we're honored.
I'm gonna have
Yeah,
to,
we are. We
no,
sure
this is my. It's a privilege to me to come down and talk to you guys. I mean, this is
So-
fabulous.
Is the marathon your favorite race? Or favorite distance?
It is now. I mean, I've run 108 of them, so I think that my body and the way I run works better for a marathon in terms of how I run. I'm not a fast. I mean, if I look at my PRs, 5K was low 15s, like 15:15, 10K 32 and change, half marathon 112 and change. But the marathon distance, I consistently was under 3 hours for a long period of time. And I think I enjoy the training for it as much as running them.
Well, we've mentioned that before. We like the training about as much as we do actually running it. Because it's
Yes.
a lot of social, for us, it's social time. Just get together and talk and that sort of thing. So and just to accomplish something, and
It
you
is.
you get out there at 5:30 in the morning and you run 20 miles. You feel like you're on the world. I mean, most people aren't even up by the time you finish.
We said that on Saturday. I had 2 ladies, Rainey and Dawn, and actually Haley was with us too. And I said, my goal, I want to be able to run and walk 5 hours for this Boston Virtual. Because let's be honest, that could be a blazing day, September 12th. So I'm training to time on feet, I guess. So Saturday's goal was 2 hours and 45 minutes. So I told the girls, we've got to run slow. And they were great. I think we ended up with 3 hours, and it was awesome. Absolutely awesome.
Now, Rainey, she just ran her first marathon.
She
right?
ran her first marathon in Albany. And after that was March 7th, and the next day they basically shut down Albany because everything that was going on with Corona. So we snuck that Snickers in.
Now, what she have going on? I hope she don't mind us talking about her. But did she come and say, "Hey, I want to run a marathon"? Or
Yes, and Rainey doesn't mind. She approached me in August and said, she messaged me on Facebook, because you can't text me, you can't call me, because I'm just not a phone guy. And she said, will you help me with a half marathon training plan? Can you give me any tips? And I said, absolutely. So like anybody else, and especially a female, I said, can we meet in a public place? And we did. We met in Chili's, and we sat down and we discussed her plan. And I said, any questions? She says, will you do the long runs with me? I says, if I can. And I said, I'm a busy guy. And I said, a lot of my runs are at 4 in the morning, especially before school. And that girl, gosh, she'd get up at 4 in the morning before work, run with me. And then we did a few runs during the cross-country season. We go to Tallahassee. We go to all these meets, and our bus leaves at, say, 5
Early.
Early. We did a couple of 10, 12-milers at 2 o'clock in the morning.
The football teams, a lot of the football teams, high school, which Colquitt County started it, they started leaving the day before. I think cross country should do the same thing, because those are early morning bus rides.
Yes.
Because the race,
Yeah.
those races start at 8 o'clock.
Yes, yes.
And so even if you're down in Tallahassee, you're leaving here at 5 o'clock in the morning to get there, run warm-ups. My son runs cross country at the Valdosta Middle School. I said, I don't care what you do, but you're going to run cross country.
So she's dedicated. She did long runs. It's for me at my age, it's great to see people accomplish their goals.
Right.
And for me to see the satisfaction on her face, or some of these other like Dawn and Haley, when they achieve something, I feel like I've contributed. And it's more exciting to me to help them with their marathon than mine, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
So when I come across the finish line in Boston, it's pretty cool, though. I will say that's a feeling. Especially my children are older now, and they're at the finish on Boylston Street. And a few years ago, it was in 2018. It was 37 degrees, and it was raining as hard as you've ever seen it rain. Like in, the worst thunderstorm in South Georgia when it's coming down, you can't see. It rained like that the entire time. It was freezing.
That's the year that Debbie ran it.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
right.
Yeah, I remember.
Do you remember
her.
Jacksonville Bank several years ago when it
Yes.
rained like that?
Yes.
Do you remember that? It was like a monsoon for like
Yes.
several miles. Yeah.
And it was freezing. I thought I wasn't worried about my legs. I wasn't worried about my conditioning. I thought I was going to freeze because I went into hypothermia at 15 miles. I was, and I looked on the sidelines, and this lady with an umbrella, and she had mittens on. And I ran over to her. I says, "Ma'am, I have no right to ask you this, but I would be forever indebted. I can never thank you, but could you please give me your mittens?" And she says, "I've got something better." And she had those hunters, those heat things that you put in your.
Yeah.
And she had 4 of them. She gave me 4. She put 2 down my shirt, and she put 2 in my hands, and I instantly warmed up. Instantly. And gosh, I was smiling because I knew I was going to make it at that point.
Yeah.
But
Wow, how nice.
Yes, and my finish line picture that year, you can just see, it's just, you can barely see me because there's so much rain, but big smile on my face, and the kids, my son's like, they're smart. They don't say, "Hey, Dad." They go, "Hey, Beeman," because everybody, if it's your kid, they're, "Hey, Dad," so they now take pride in taking a selfie with me in the background finishing that Boston Marathon. So that's pretty cool.
So, any of your children runners?
Well, Melanie is she's 24, and she has run a few half marathons with me. And my son, who's 19, he's in this category. He loves podcasts, and he's a big videographer. He does a lot of videos for rappers, and he's gone to LA, Atlanta, and so on and so forth. He's into this. Like, I told him that I was going to go down and see Joe Rogan and Bert Kreischer and all those famous.
Well, maybe he can come in and give us some tips because we truly are just winging it.
Hey, him. I mean, he knows. He's the guy who knows everything. I just show up.
And I've learned everything that I know about podcasting and video streaming since Corona started.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
everything that I've put together has been since Corona.
This is great.
I had no idea how to do this.
Yeah, you've
before.
done a good job. You really have.
So.
Yeah.
It's great. I love it. I love the name, the running theory. It's great stuff.
We came up with that along a run.
Yeah, we sure
one
did.
day.
Yeah, we put a lot of stuff together. We get together, we talk about this stuff, we come up with all these ideas. And
All
of
ideas.
course, ideas sound great when you're running. Everything's like, oh my God, it's just a wonderful idea. But when you get back and you kind of start thinking about it, you say, well, we can probably get rid of that.
I solve all the world's problems when I'm
Sure,
running.
same here. Yeah,
Oh,
mowing
yeah.
grass.
We've
Mowing
done
grass
it
and
twice at least.
Yeah.
All of them. And you also solve, that's the great thing about running, you solve problems that maybe you were going to talk to somebody and complain to them, or maybe
Yeah.
it's a relationship problem, maybe it's a friend problem. And boy, you soften after 2 hours of running.
I agree. I'm totally that same way. I mean, I think about an issue and I start thinking, I could do it this way or do it that way. And by the time you get through running, you've kind of, like you say, you smooth it all out.
You do, and I think most runners that I've met are so laid back. They don't have the big tempers, and there's very few runners I've met that are you don't like, And sometimes at the elite level, you might meet somebody that's, wow, he won't talk to you.
Wound pretty tight.
But the old timers, like Bill Rogers, it's he is as nice can be.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing I love about running, because if you line up at the Boston Marathon, you're lining up with some of the best runners in the world, and they're running the exact same race, maybe an hour or two start before you, but they're running the exact same race.
Yeah.
And they're just there, and they're going to struggle exactly like you're going to struggle. It's like if we were playing baseball, you're going to go up there and you're going to, swing off in, Yankee Stadium, just like Aaron Judd is going to be up there later that afternoon or something. And that's what makes runners real. Like the world-class runners, it makes them real because they're going to be out there on the same course doing the exact same thing. And you have the opportunity to do that. And that's what I love about running.
Yeah. Runners are very relatable too. We relate to each other's issues and shortcomings and injuries and all that sort of thing. So I think that's really good, and it makes you running's just very zen anyway. You get
And
out there
it'll humble you very quickly.
Oh yeah,
It will. What I like about it, and I tell the girls this because for some reason I've mentioned women, and a lot of women train with me because I think the greatest thing you can have with a female or an opposite gender runner is trust. trust. So they trust me to run with them. But where are you going to go out? You're not going to go out to dinner with somebody for 3 hours and talk to them about some of the craziest things, because as the miles go further and further and further, the talk gets more crazy and crazy and euphoric. And by the time you hit 3 hours, which we did the other day, we're talking about all sorts of things. But that's not going to happen if at a bar or wherever you're at. It just bonds people together. There's such a trust factor in running, and I value the friendships. I value the all the relationships I've had over the years that I've made in South Georgia. I mean, I'm not from here, and I know a lot of the Valdosta Running Club. Of course, the Tifton runners. I'm not worldly, the Atlanta people, not so much, but you can you're relatable, and it's neat to be able and support, so on and so forth. So
yeah, the majority of people that I talk to on a regular basis are runners.
Yes.
And me and Rick, we might not. I mean, we hadn't really talked in several years.
Oh, you mean up to now? Yeah.
Up until now, until we started running again. But then it's just like, it was like we, never stopped.
Picked up where we left off. Yeah, we both kind of went in different directions for a little while because I'd had a little bit of. I know I say this every episode, but I had a little surgery, and I just kind of really got sidelined for a while. I just kind of lost my interest in running. I just was not into it at all anymore. And I was getting out there, and I was just making myself, nothing to do with the group, but I was just making myself personally run the 6 miles every Wednesday. And that's all I wanted. I didn't want anything else. I hated it.
Yeah.
It was unusual because I loved running so much, but I was getting out there, and that was really all I could do. And then, I couldn't run for a while, so I wasn't running with you guys on Sunday mornings anymore, and we just kind of drifted apart there for a little while. But something happened and just to say this again, probably for the umpteenth time, something happened last year around the end of the year. Something snapped, and I just came back. I don't know how to explain it. The cooler weather, just kind of had that desire to run again, and I just got back into it, So I hung on for a while, and by just barely hanging on by the whites of my nails here, I guess. But now I feel like I'm back.
And it's allowed me to travel. I've run marathons and different countries, different states, and you see so much. But it's whether it's South Georgia or Boston, Massachusetts, the sights are unbelievable. I was telling you about Poulin. That's the furthest I've traveled. Yeah. Amy's farmhouse out there. We were running around there, and they've got these cows. She's got they're not hers, but the cows chase us when we run by and stuff like that. You can't put a price on that activity or those memories and stuff like that. And I think that's what brings us all together, and kind of softens the heart. Because we get along so well. When I see you and whoever you might be running with that, right? Whether it's David Van or Ernest or Jim, Jeff, it's always, hey guys, what's going on? And you guys are moving along. And you notice a lot of times when you pass me, we're walking because we're disciplined in that. 3 minutes run, 1 minute walk. So people go, I see you walking a lot. And I says, well, try to keep up with us sometime and see how that works, because the overall pace is always interesting when we do that. So, it works for me. It doesn't work for everybody.
Right.
Some people don't like to walk, and that's okay. For me, it improves my posture because when you get older, you do this. And so when you walk, all of a sudden you're upright again, and you bring your shoulders back. And I noticed when I started doing that, my shoulders didn't hurt as much because runners have a tendency, these things get real weak. And I have to watch myself, stay up straight.
So you're also cross-country coach?
Yes.
So have y'all started training, or
we have?
What is that?
This is a dead week, and it's a great question. Everything's volunteer. We're allowed to gather. We were 25 a session. Now we can go 50. But if a kid shows up with a temperature, you have to fill out these forms. Do you have a temperature? You have to do this. Are you coughing? So on, stay home if you're sick. So on and so on and so forth. My question was, what if a kid comes Tuesday and Wednesday he calls me and says, I got COVID? What happens there? What's that scenario? It's a very convoluted scenario because if the kid's parents don't want us to say the name, we can't. We can't say the name. We can just say somebody had COVID. If you want to get tested or if you want to quarantine, you can. but we don't make them quarantine, which is it's an interesting dynamic because there's some businesses that have literally closed because people were exposed to somebody that had COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes me a little nervous, but I can promise you I stay way away from I'm probably 20 feet apart, and I can do what I have to do. And I ride in my car. I don't run with the kids right now just because I want to be safe, and I want to go around in my car to make sure they're safe. So if I can run with them, when things are normal, I run every afternoon with them, and it's great, especially when they see the old man going by them,
Because, cross country is one of those sports that it starts first week of school, if not before.
Yes.
I mean, you hit the ground running. And so with the layoff, you have, 8th graders that are coming up. How do they know about the cross country team? You show up on the first day of school and say, "Hey, you want to be on you want to join the team?" Which they got 4 years to build up, but like I said, you might have some real runners out there who are in 8th grade, and they have not, because you ended school year early last year, so I don't know if you had a chance to get into the middle schools and promote the program, and then there's also the issue of budgets and things like that and having to raise money, because if you don't know, which I know they don't allot a lot of money for cross country, which it's a girls and a boys team. You might have 40, 50 runners. You might have half a football team and not even a tenth of the budget. I don't even know.
Yeah, but our football team funds our cross country, so I'm very friendly with them. But to the point about the middle school, we have more middle school runners out in the last 3 weeks, and we've got some great middle school runners, great, and they're out there every single night. I do 2 sessions, one in the morning and one in the evening, 7:30 in the morning and 6:30 at night. And they're at both just because I have nothing better to do. But it's great to see the little guys. They're so cute. They're impressionable. They don't have cars, and they just want to run and run and run and run and run, and they're just adorable. So we have a great middle school program. My problem is keeping them motivated till when they're a senior in high school, because then they have alternatives, and they have cars, and they have girlfriends, boyfriends, jobs, so on and so forth. So that's the hard part. The middle school kids are awesome.
Hey, when I showed up in Tifton, I didn't really know anybody initially, and I recognized this phenomenon pretty quickly, though, that kept seeing these T-shirts that said Beeman boys, Beeman girls. I've even been to restaurants where they'd be working, they have their smock on, but I'd see the back of the shirt and say Beeman boy, Beeman girl. So tell us about that, Mike.
Well, it started as a joke. We were in a talent show when I first came down here. We did this talent show, and I don't know what we did, but we made a video, and we did this thing called "I'd walk 500 miles by the Pretenders." I would walk 500 miles, and so we did this video, and it showed 10 guys walking, but we had white T-shirts. It wasn't Beeman Boys, and we did the video, and then for the talent show, the screen, it showed us walking into the auditorium. Well, then the screen went away, and we came walking in, but we were walking. I mean, we were walking through Valdosta, we were walking through McDonald's drive-thrus and stuff like that. So we did this stupid skit on stage. We were terrible, and we won the talent show. So the kids said, "Well, you got to get us some T-shirts, and we've got to get a name for ourselves." So I says, "Well," one of the kids says, "Well, what about the Beeman Boys?" And so we spelled it B-M-A-N. So we made these shirts, and every kid in the school wanted them for whatever reason. I said, "No, that was the talent show kids." So the next year, we did it again, but more kids wanted to do it. So we made more shirts, and then I started selling them, and then it went.
It took off. I'll say that. I see them all over. For
Spirit Week one year, they all dressed up as. Now you can't do it because it's offensive, and I'm serious. They can't. They called it Nerd Day, but they can't call it that anymore because it's offensive. But we had 300 kids dress up with these funny glasses and the shirts and these, and so it's.
Now it's Hipster Day.
Yeah. So then, in 2008, the girls wanted equal opportunity.
Yeah,
so the girls wanted them in 2008. So at first I wouldn't do them, and the girls go, I said, "It's not right if I make Beeman girl shirts." They said, "It is right if we ask you to." it's okay. And so now more girls have them than guys. So I'll have to get some for the crew here.
Oh wow, that'd be great.
You know,
Definitely.
Yeah, I want a Beeman shirt any day. That'd be great.
You got to have that because now you're part of the cult.
That's right. That's right. Hey, what restaurant are you on the wall in there in Tifton? I saw a snippet. I saw maybe in the newspaper. I saw a picture of you, and maybe Gina Purvis on the wall.
It's at Applebee's.
Applebee's. He's on the wall. You and Applebee's. He's on the wall. Yeah.
Yeah, it's at Applebee's. Yes,
Yeah.
it's.
I thought that was great that they did that. I mean, how did that happen? Did they just come to you and say you're
if you
you're
run a
legendary
road
Mike
race,
Beeman?
any picture, if you sign a waiver to road race, any photography they do is they can use it in a public setting. And what happened is it was after the June market race in downtown, the Market Square or something like that.
Is that run? Gosh, I used to help put it on.
The 5K right
Yeah,
down by the
Run to the market.
Yes,
run to the market.
And so Gina Purvis and I had a awards picture taken, and they took that picture and they plastered it on the wall. So I went in there because everybody was taking pictures next to it, and I said, hey, can I get a free appetizer because my picture's on the wall? I says, that's part of the ambiance in here. And the manager says, no.
Didn't need a spokesman, huh?
Yeah, I haven't been back since, you know. It's
They
nice.
got you all there all the time anyway, right? I mean,
Yeah, it's nice to be on a wall somewhere for
yeah,
something.
yeah,
You know?
very deserving. Yeah, I thought it was pretty neat when I saw that.
Well, they have banners up in Boston for the top 10 that have run it the most. So those are kind of neat. I just want mine. I want to have one, you know.
Yeah.
But it's an honor, you know, in that respect. You know, when you see something like that, you know, in the city of Boston, you know, right down in Faneuil Hall. They only put them up when the marathon week. Like I said, the marathon up there is very serious, you know.
Well, Mike, looking at a 56-year-old guy like myself and a 40-year-old guy like Rob, I mean, and we're probably we can run faster than this, but you know, just we're probably at 9 minutes. Wouldn't you say, Rob? Just kind of conservatively, we're a 9-minute runners right now, comfortably. I mean, is it possible for us guys to qualify for Boston?
Yes. The key to, you know, gaining speed. What are your PRs in the marathon distance?
My best is probably like a 3:57 is probably my best.
3:57.
I'm in that range, 350s.
So your age has a lot to do with your qualifying time, because if you're 56, you're probably talking sub. I think it's 3:45.
Oh, is it? I thought it was 3:30, but 3:45 sounds better.
Yeah, I think it's
It is like a couple minutes better than that, right? To kind of ensure yourself.
Yeah. So the key to it is the weekly long run, where you're going, you know, to train for that. You know, you're talking 9:30s, you know, for distance. I go all the way up to 24 miles in training. And then the alternate weeks, I put people on a 16-week plan. And the alternate weeks, what I do is an indicator run. That's what I did with Melissa, is an indicator run.
I was going to ask you about her because I used to run with Melissa a little bit, and you know, she's always been a great runner, but man, she is like a beast now.
Yes.
I mean, she shellacked me. I ran with her in the Jacksonville Bank Marathon several years ago, and I think it might have been her first marathon. But man, she just hung me out to dry. Which, I mean, it was all good. I mean, she totally deserving of it. I mean, she's very fast.
I put her on a plan, and she is a beast. And she had to run sub 3:30 up at Boston. She ran 3:25 and change, and she requalified. She was all set to go this year. But her indicator runs, that's what I call them, is you build up, you know, during that 16 weeks where you go 8, then the alternate week from the long run, 9, 10, and you go up and you run the pace desired for the marathon distance. So in her case, she had to run, you know, those indicator runs at 8 minutes a mile, you know, because that's what she was planning on. Is because if you can't run, because a 3:28 or a 3:29:14 is a 8-minute pace for the marathon distance. If you can't run 15 miles at 8-minute pace, you're not going to do it for 26. It's pretty simple. But you can't do your long runs that way. They've got to be much slower. So you build your strength one week, and then you get your leg turnover the other weeks, you know, where you do those indicator runs. No, I think that's very doable for both of you. Just how much time you have and how much desire to do it. You know, those two things. If you focus on the training and do it, I definitely believe if you've already been below 4, it's just a matter of bringing it down. But it's I'll be honest with you, it's tough. And I qualified for last year's Boston Marathon. I'd run like 3:49 down in Jacksonville. I don't know why. I have no idea why I wanted to qualify when I didn't have to. And then I've run a few sub 4s in the last couple of years for no reason. Just wanted to do it to prove that I qualified.
Still make the grade.
Because they have so many lists up there. They have a list of the most that people have done. They have that list. Then there's a list of, I believe, the most qualified, that you've qualified the most. And that's a different list because of the people that have done it that many times, because some people stop qualifying after 25 years. I believe my number is, I think I've qualified for it 39 or 40 times out of 42 times doing it. And it's a blessing, as far as that goes. But I don't look at it and go, oh, wow, I qualified more times than you. Or it's just because one of these days I'm not going to make the distance because something's going to happen, or or hopefully it'll come back. We may have already experienced the good old days.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It might be where the Boston Marathon's a week long.
Yes.
They do, the age groupers on this certain day. I mean, we have to really start to look at, can we get 60,000 people in one place anymore at all?
That's correct.
And road racing might be the easiest thing to do. Is you show up on Monday, you're going to run, this group of people's going to run. You're going to show up on Tuesday. The elites are going to be on a different day. And as long as it comes back, I don't know if anybody's going to really care,
Yeah.
But, so these things, New York Marathon, they have a bazillion people. Peachtree has so many people in that one place. And, even at the Gate River Run, when you're all in the corral and you're like shoulder to shoulder, is that going to be, are we going to do that in the next, couple years? I don't know.
You're right. I don't know. There's so many what ifs right now. I don't even know what to say.
But you know what? Running and training right now, you can do it anytime.
Yeah, you still have fun.
You can
Anytime.
be out there,
Yep. That's absolutely right. You set the parameters on what success is every day. My run today, my goal was to run for 2 hours. It was hotter than Hades and humid. The points were high, but I did it. So I set the parameters. I wanted to do 2 hours, and I did. So that's a successful run. If I said I wanted to run 4 miles in 9-minute pace, and I set those goals, and I don't need other people to do it. I do it, and you feel accomplished. The funny thing is, despite not putting it on social media, I did run this morning. As far as some people put their Stravas and map my runs, which I think is awful. But I don't have the ability to do that.
So are you old school as far as the fact that you don't GPS run or do anything like that?
I have a 1080 Walmart watch, and I just measure my courses with my wheel, and I calibrated my wheel to my wheel on my car, so they're equal, and so I can measure courses extremely accurate. And that's how we did it in the old days. That's, the courses were measured, and we just go out and run them. And way back in the 70s, courses weren't 10Ks and 5Ks. They were the distance the course was. So there's a lot of odd distances, like 5.7 and 10.2, and Falmouth, one of the biggest road races in America, which is usually in August, is 7.1 miles, and it's always been one of the biggest races in America, and 7.1 miles. It's a point to point.
And you keep a log.
Yes.
You keep a journal or log.
Journal, log.
What does your log book look like?
The ones you get from Nathan's, or some of them it was a notebook, back in the good old days. But those, and there I have boxes of them, and it's neat to look back in the 70s and see what I was thinking and what I was doing, and some of the idiotic things I would write in there. I think I've dropped out of one marathon, and it was Rhode Island. It was the Ocean State Marathon. And I was trying to qualify for the Olympic trials, which that year the provisional goal, the provisional standard was 2:28. And I had run that 2:31 up in, that was a short course. And so I went out, and I think I had to run 5:40 a mile. Something like that. I can't remember. And I got to 16 miles, and I was running well. And I ran a 6-minute mile. And the next mile was like 5:53. And I said, I'm done. Because I gave up. What a stupid thing to do, because it would have been a PR. It would have been a great time, I can't run 1 mile in 5 minutes and 45 seconds now. I can't imagine doing that at this age. But it's all, that's what age does to you. You know, people that were, my friends that could run 2:09 and 2:10 for the marathon distance, they have a tough time, just running 10-minute pace, because the effort, the, atrophy of their, body and so on and so forth, and the desire. If you were at this level, at the Olympic level, what's the desire other than fitness? And there's a lot of guys like that I know that are friends of mine. They go, we just enjoy it. We don't like beating up our bodies anymore.
I can understand that. I mean, I'm glad I came back around, but I can understand that mentality.
Yeah. Why are you doing it? I just still enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's obvious. It shows. I mean, especially if you say you get so much satisfaction out of it even now.
It's a lot of fun.
Rob, what are we looking like?
Well, it is almost 5 o'clock, so we've
Wow.
been going for an hour 21.
Wow,
That's
pretty good.
It flies by when you're doing this podcast, just
Yeah.
talking, and I could probably sit here and talk for another 2
Sure,
hours.
yeah, easy, yeah.
But
Because
the
and
listeners.
we should have you back in the fall when you're doing the virtual, or about the week
Okay.
before you do the virtual,
Okay.
and we'll talk about it, and then maybe go through the course
Okay.
and do, because that is, I mean, it's America's race. I mean, you can have the New York City, you can have the Olympic trials where they were in Atlanta this year, but there's nothing like the Boston. I mean, it's the race that everybody in America, if you put on a pair of running shoes, the Boston Marathon.
Yeah.
And so I could listen to that for hours and hours on end.
Well, the way I'm going to set it up in Tifton, since it is virtual, is I'm going to set up a repetitive course in Tifton, so that I'm inviting people to run it, sections of it with me, or a 5K or 10K, whatever they want to do, they can join me. But it's going to be slow. It's going to be my marathon, my rules. But if you want to run ahead or behind to participate, that's going to be
Yeah. Let's get up before you do that, and let's see what we can do to, kind of not promote it, but maybe promote it a little bit if you want to come and support. I mean, because it's going to be a lot different than running out there, the loops, as it is, running down the streets of Boston, running Heartbreak Hill.
I don't know what Mike's pregame or pre-race thing is, but who knows? We might can even go out there and talk to him before he starts or something. Right? Maybe when you finish.
Yes, absolutely. That'll be a lot of fun. The more people you can bring into it, and I've had a lot of people said that they're either going to cheer or they're going to show up and run. It's neat because they realize the magnitude of it and the disappointment that people had when Boston was canceled and so on and so forth. But it is nothing like it. And I've run Montreal, Bermuda, San Diego, New York, Jacksonville, Snickers. The fans of Boston they're just unbelievable. They are, and they now a lot of them know me just because of my shirt. I'm the guy that comes by with a Wellesley shirt and then changes it to Boston College. But and then you see people along the way. For years, I would see people that I never saw but once a year, like college friends, college teammates would be on the course, and you'd see them and you'd say they are always standing right there. My college basketball coach, as gruff and rough as he was, and thought I was crazy to run that first Boston Marathon in April of 1978. I didn't know it at the time until I got to 25-mile mark, and he was standing there smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
And he goes, it's like, "Attaboy, Michael, good job." And it was it almost makes me cry to know that he took his time. And then later on the 25th anniversary, when I was running my 25th straight, they did an article in the Boston Globe about it. I don't know why they picked me because I wasn't the number one guy, but they did. They chose to do the article and they interviewed him. And it was neat, his reflection on that, and how he says, I was so proud of him. It was like my own son. I mean, that meant a lot.
Wow.
to me.
Did he say he was a little upset when he found out that you ran a
No,
a
'cause,
marathon mid-season?
He didn't. He wasn't upset because I wasn't that good. He didn't have to flame me 'cause I couldn't jump, and I could jump very high. That was I could jump really, really high. But if you think about it, if you're training for running, you put all your energy into running. If you're training for basketball, obviously I'm going to train to jump high so I can get up. I mean, I could jump up and dunk a basketball with two hands, no problem. But after that, I couldn't even jump over a telephone book.
Well, Mike, just before we sign up, I want to ask you one question. I don't even know if you can do this, but what's your favorite running moment? Your training, racing. What's your favorite moment in the whole scheme of things?
I'll try to answer it short, but it's not a race. In 1998, I pushed my daughter, Melanie, in a stroller. She was 2 years old, and I wanted to raise money for Make-A-Wish, the organization that grants wishes for kids with terminally ill diseases. And I approached Make-A-Wish, and I said, I want to run from Canada to Salem, New Hampshire, to Massachusetts. The length of New Hampshire is 248 miles. I'm going to do it in 8 days. I'm going to run 31 miles a day. And I'm going to push her in the stroller, 10 miles, 10 miles, 10 miles, every single day for 8 days. And they said, you're out of your mind. And I had to raise $4,000 to grant a wish. So I signed the contract. I trained for 9 months. My, Marie, supported it. And Melanie was only 2 years old. And we ran from the Canadian border to the Massachusetts border and raised a little over $23,000.
Goodness gracious.
Wow.
That's memory number one. And memory number two is I did it again with my son. And, we did that in 2002. So it's not a racing moment. It's the fact that I did over a marathon a day for 8 straight days. And that accomplishment was it was neat, and it was for me it was great because we granted 12 wishes in the 2 times we did it. And so that's my greatest running moment.
That's awesome.
And
wow,
do your kids have any memory of this?
No, they said we remember your feet moving. That's
now.
about it.
You were using a jogging stroller?
Yeah, I had a state-of-the-art Trek that was donated by Trek. And it's like a condominium on wheels, and it was just an amazing stroller. And
because that's the one thing, 31 miles a day, that's probably more than most of them get in a lifetime.
Yes. And the one that I pushed Melanie is in the New England Sports Hall of Fame.
No, that's cool.
Wow.
It was a big deal up there at the time because it was crazy, and it was like, are you kidding me type of deal. But if you want to raise money, you got to do something extreme.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I had people tell me I was out of my mind. I wasn't sure after the first day if I wasn't out of my mind. That's a long ways.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah.
But,
Holy cow. That's an incredible feat.
I was 42 at the time, so, I mean, I felt I could do it, and I trained for it, and 200.
Well, 9 months of training. That's all I heard from the first, I'm like,
Yeah.
9 months of training? You talk about 16 weeks, that's 3 months. That seems like a long time.
Yeah.
9 months
Yeah.
is a really long time.
And I know I was in good shape because that year at Boston I ran like a 3:07 at age 42, so I was fit.
Yeah.
And
See, all these guys, Steve Plymouth, him, they do all their good stuff at 42.
Yeah. You're
I
40.
got 2 years.
Yeah,
I
man.
got 2 years.
You
If
haven't
I
hit your
can
peak
get
yet.
if I can get on the Beeman plan 2 years from now.
Yeah. Man, you'll have stories like this.
Yeah.
Well, maybe.
Well, you know what?
You have something to talk
I got
about.
2 11-month-old twins. 11-month-old twins. I'm 40 years old. So when they're 2 years old, I'll be 41.
I am inspired for you to do that.
So I can get the double jogging stroller out
Yeah.
Yes,
and do something
a double
crazy.
wide. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, let's put it on the books.
Let's
Yep.
keep it in mind, man. That sounds good. Hey, I have
All right.
enjoyed it.
Yeah,
It's
this
been
is
great.
great. I hope your
So-
ratings go up.
Yeah. I'm sure they
Well,
will.
if you like it and you share the post, they will go up because
right.
this man knows a lot.
He's connected. I'm sure he's connected.
You share it with me.
And
Will do.
and then
Sure
if
will.
you have any connections that somebody feels sorry for 2 slow guys in Valdosta, Georgia who want to come run the Boston Marathon, if you have any pull, we
Yeah.
will take it, whatever you got.
Okay.
So like and share on Facebook and YouTube. We stream live on Facebook and YouTube every Monday, or most Mondays.
Most Mondays. We finagle it. We get it in there. Yeah.
Sometime in the afternoons. We are all we can do is promise, most Mondays.
Like you say, we deliver content.
We deliver content every Monday. Yeah. So, but then again, if you want to listen to the podcast is on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and a bunch of other podcast venues. It usually takes me a day or two to load that up. But we appreciate you. Amanda Boone says, "Hey, Beeman."
Hey.
Charlie Mizell says, "Hello, Mr. Beeman. Thank you for all your effort in helping me and others in the running community." And shout out to Mona Thomas, who says hello. So, anything else?
No, we'll be back next week.
We'll be back next
Stephanie
week.
Dorman next week.
Stephanie Dorman next week, and she has her own little journey that we're going to talk
She sure
about.
does. Super interesting. I'm looking forward to talking to her.
So we appreciate y'all watching, and we'll see y'all next week. Thanks.
Thank you, guys. Is it okay to talk?
Yeah, we're good. Thank you, Mike.
That was live.